Oh, hello everyone. Welcome to the live chat. We just upgraded our internet, so everything loaded up much faster. No hang, no nothing. Looks like everything's working well on YouTube, so that's good. Look at that. Very nice. And let me make sure I mute everything. Duh. So it's been a crazy week. We have a couple things to knock out before we get into the weather discussion. First of all, uh, I am going to a AMS seminar next week, so we're not having live chat next week. And for those of you who watch the videos and the TikToks and all that stuff, I'm going to try to do the videos next week. I will do all the tech stuff, absolutely. I will attempt to do the videos, but I don't know what type of internet connection I'm working with back out off in Boise. I have no idea. Not that I'm saying there's anything wrong with Boise. It's just that I have no idea what type of you know upload I'm going to have, upload capability. So we'll see how that works out. Of course, I'm keeping an eye on my Mets. For those of you, I've already seen some questions here. Am I concerned? No, it's baseball. Okay, it's a long season, and this is a great opportunity to weed out the bandwagon fans. And you Yankee fans and Philly fans, you know what I'm talking about too. When the team goes into a slump, everyone who's just a fair weather fan, they all jump ship. And this is a good time to take note of who in your circle jump ship, so that way when they get to the playoffs, you take their playoff tickets. See, so that's this is the test here. Okay, you can't just give up on your team just because they go on a slump. If I may remind you, I am a baseball historian. The best team I've ever saw, the 1998 Yankees, they had a six-game losing streak, and they won like 116 games or something. So no, I'm not concerned. It's just part of the game. So now let's talk about the book of the week. Book of the week is The Weather Machine: A Journey Inside the Forecasting by Andrew Blum. This is an excellent book because it teaches you about how we built our weather infrastructure, which is kind of important. Maybe we should drop this off to Congress because it shows you how we developed forecasting, all the historical processes, everyone that's behind it, why things like the observations are very important, why the weather balloons are very important, how they help with the forecasting. So this is all great stuff here. I would strongly suggest reading this, especially as a freshman in meteorology, even in high school, right? High school student, because it gives you a better idea on where we've been as forecasters, and it gives you an appreciation of all the stuff we have at our fingertips now. If you told me back in 1998 or 99 or even 2000 that I would have immediate access to radar, satellite, model data, I would have said, so I'm a billionaire, because how else am I going to get all this information? That's only possible with large corporations and the National Weather Service. But now we could do it right now in our small little cubby right here in our small little office. You in your room, you can pull up all the weather data you want. Well, that didn't just happen, it was built by those who had foresight. So definitely check out that book. It is a great book to read. Now, let's talk about the weather. And the weather is heating up, much like my concern with how the Mets are playing right now in this inning. What is happening? Well, we've been talking about for quite some time that the weather pattern is setting up to change. I've been warning about this going back to May, saying, hey, look, we're going to be cool, we're going to be a little bit volatile, but we're going to be shifting towards a hot and humid summer. And that is exactly where we're going. And the reason why is because we're seeing changes in the AM, that's the atmospheric angular momentum, heading towards a positive state. You have barely any type of lifting involved with tropical forcing. I mean, take a look at this. The MJO is as neutral as you could possibly get because it's in the circle of death. That's what I call it. That's what other people call it. So, what that basically means is that the influence from the MJO is gone. and it's expected to remain that way all the way into July. So we don't really have MJO influence. We certainly don't have any El Nino or La Nina influence. And the SOI is, well, bouncing around neutral states. So we don't have any tropical force, and this is all driven by stratospheric anomalies. So it's not a surprise that we're starting to see stronger ridges over the east because we're seeing impressive troughs around the Aleutians. Let's pull up the 0Z hour on this. And this is the observations. And so what are we seeing? A lot of below normal heights here. So if you have below normal heights here, which matches up to the stratospheric warm anomalies, then you must have a balance in the atmosphere. So that balance is this ridge getting ready to build. And so when this ridge gets ready to build and gets ready to take hold, that's when you start to see your hot and humid air masses take shape. Then to decide who's getting the hottest temperatures, that comes down to where exactly the ridge, the heart of the ridge, the core of the ridge is going to be located. Now, the forecast over the past couple of days has had the ridge axis basically sitting right over us or to the south of us. This has the potential of really enhancing our high temperatures. So this is why in many of the models you're seeing and still seeing right now temperatures in the hundreds. I feel more comfortable with saying that the heat index would definitely be over 100 degrees in this scenario rather than the surface temperatures. It's going to be a bit of a challenge here in this forecast for that aspect, and I'll explain why in a moment. But you can see here in the operational and in the ensembles, we got a nice ridge, and this isn't changing anytime soon. If you're tired of cool, damp weather and you want plenty of sun, hot and humid conditions, and yeah, those thunderstorms from time to time. Well, this is your weather pattern. Enjoy it. It's going to be here through probably August. And the reason why I can say that with confidence is that this aspect of the weather pattern isn't changing all that much because the stratospheric environment, which is what's driving this whole pattern, combined with some mountain torque, which I'll see if I get into it. It's a little bit technical, but basically, the forcing parameters aren't changing. So you'll get some different variations, some weaknesses between the ridges, like what you see here. But all that really is some troughs and dying cold fronts. The hot and humid weather pattern is here to stay. And if you don't believe me, you want to use AI, because I know everyone wants to use AI, which, by the way, AI is nothing more than enhanced statistical analysis. It's not like the Terminator sitting out there and making the forecasts, okay? So it's basically showing the same thing. So when I see this combination of models showing this same type of environment, it tells me that, hey, look, you're going to have the potential for some feedback in the surface temperatures to allow for that heat to build. You're also going to have more stalling, dying cold fronts in this weather pattern. And although right now the tropics are quiet, we're really going to have to keep an eye on anything around the Bahamas because what this is setting up is a southwesterly and southerly flow right out of the Gulf, right out of the Caribbean, right out of the Bahamas, right up the East Coast. So I'm not saying that we will. I'm saying we need to be aware. We need to keep an eye on it. We need to keep an eye on this region because anything that develops in this region is going to have the potential to bring us flooding rains. So this is going to be something that I'm going to be keeping a very, very careful eye on throughout the summer and into the fall. So we're seeing this pattern evolution take shape, and I want to show you the 850 millibar temperatures just to kind of give you an idea from the North Americans' perspective here, kind of zoomed out. And what I'm showing you here is the buildup in the core of this heat, right? As we go through the next 10 days. And what we're seeing here is a sustained ability to keep us around 20 degrees Celsius, which sounds hot. But here's the real concern here. The heat's bad, but you can always use the air conditioner. It's the humidity that I'm very worried about. As we go through the next 10 days, more and more moisture is being driven into the northern Atlantic. And our precipitable water values are remaining sustained for the most part above 1.5 inches, at times over 2 inches. Why is this important to me? Okay, this environment and this type of data tells me that we're dealing with a humid air mass. Our low temperatures are going to be very warm because the atmosphere is loaded up with so much moisture. Temperatures aren't going to drop all that much. So the prospect of low temperatures in your 70s and 80s is much more reasonable with this type of data when you're looking at the 10-day forecast or even 15-day forecast, because you have the moisture source, you have the moisture transport. Also, it isn't going to take much to get your heat index up to 100 degrees with this type of moisture. For example, today we got up to 88 degrees here in Freehold. Heat index came in at 101. Why? It wasn't the temperatures, it was the humidity. That's what hits you hard. And that is what's taking shape here, and that's what's starting to evolve here. Now, this deep amount of moisture also brings up around another threat: isolated, intense, severe thunderstorms capable of flash flooding. While I don't expect a lot of cold fronts, I am concerned about sea breeze fronts in this pattern. Because again, you have a lot of moisture to work with. So you have a lot, when you have a lot of moisture in the atmosphere, when you have this environment, you allow thunderstorms to grow and tap into the potential for frequent vivid lightning, strong updrafts interacting with dry air aloft, which means strong downburst wind gusts. You're talking about possibly downburst wind gusts over 50 miles per hour, possibly pushing 70 miles per hour. And you also open up the potential, because these thunderstorms are very slow moving, of significant flash flooding in localized spots. So a couple of years ago, we had this similar pattern set up. And if some of you guys remember, around Newark, we had a thunderstorm that just sat there and produced 4 inches of rain and massive flooding. The flights were delayed more so than normal, and you just had a rough period of weather. Okay, and the flooding created all sorts of problems with the roadways, and it was just in one stretch, one spot. The thunderstorm just wouldn't move. That's what we're going to be watching for. So this is not a pattern of widespread rainfall unless we start introducing some tropical factors, but it is certainly one that is going to keep us on our toes on a variety of different measures, from the heat and humidity, the heat index, which is going to be dangerous. And you know me, I don't like to, dangerous, ooh, everything's scary, hype, hype, I'm not about that, which is probably why I don't have a billion people following me. But what I'm trying to say to you is that we aren't used to this type of heat and humidity. We just got out of 55s and 60s, and we're jumping to a heat index of 95 and 100. That is going to put a lot of stress on your body. And even for someone who, like me, I go out to the gym, I take shape, I make sure I'm in good shape, all that good stuff. This is really bad for me, and it's really bad for you. So don't underestimate this heat that is on the way. Now, in the meantime, tropics are pretty quiet. So that's the good news here. There is literally nothing. I'm going to wait until July 1st to make this statement, because typically we see on social media everyone make a big deal about, oh, how many hurricanes or tropical systems we have and how it's above normal for a trend. So I think it's going to be a nice thing to celebrate the fact that we may actually get through all of June with no tropical systems, and maybe just say, hey, it's slightly below normal. That's great. Below normal activity. I think that should be celebrated, because God knows no one needs a tropical storm or hurricane. Now, unfortunately, the other side of Mexico is dealing with a hurricane. This is Hurricane Eric. It has winds of 110 miles per hour. It is one nasty system, and it rapidly developed, and it is about to make landfall tonight into tomorrow morning. Unfortunately, this is going to lead to a lot of flooding. But on our side, there is nothing going on. And oh, by the way, the rest of the Pacific is pretty quiet as well. So we're not really seeing much activity out there either. The tropical Atlantic, I mean, this is what you want to see. Not much in the intertropical convergence zone. The the Sahara Desert continues to supply plenty of dust, keeping us nice and quiet. Nothing going on in the Caribbean. And guess what? In the forecast here, going all the way out to 15 days, I am seeing literally no sign of any type of organized warm core low in the Atlantic. So that takes us all the way into early July, which, hopefully this is 100% accurate and we can enjoy a nice quiet start to the hurricane season. But of course, as always, just remember, it only needs one. Remember Hurricane Andrew? That happened later in the season, and it still created a lot of damage. So we still have to, stay on our toes in that respect. So let's take a look at where we are right now and what is the potential for thunderstorms for tomorrow, which I'm a bit concerned about. Okay, so first of all, today, what did we see? The marine air mass that was in place this morning that was producing fog and just very, very cool, damp conditions got blown out of the area. It got ripped right out. And the warm front charged through. We had a few thunderstorms, we had some showers. The winds have been veering slowly from the southeast to the west as that warm front is taking hold, and our temperatures have jumped as a result. You can see on the WeatherTap radar and surface map a lot of activity here. Let me just refresh this just to make sure we get the latest. So I left here all the warning boxes and the lightning. Why did I leave the lightning? I kind of wanted to illustrate what happens with this tropical air mass. Even some of these weaker storms are producing a good amount of lightning. So this kind of illustrates my point that, hey, when you have all this moisture in the atmosphere and you're talking about precipitable water values pushing 2 inches, like what you're seeing here, 2.1, near 2 inches here, out in the Ohio River Valley, this is an impressive amount of moisture. So when you have this type of impressive amount of moisture, it opens up the potential for a lot of frequent vivid lightning. Now, right now, we have an impressive complex here in the Ohio River Valley with some very impressive severe weather. I'm pointing this out because this is all associated with the polar shortwave. Where this polar shortwave tracks, that's where the bulk of the severe weather is going to be for tomorrow. We should probably take a look at the model data, right? We'll do that in just a second. But I want to set up the whole environment that we have. Okay, so first of all, tons of moisture. There's no lack of moisture. Okay. And when you start getting up into these levels, it starts to go above the key. When you start getting up into the 2.2 range, that is some soupy air. So if you like your humidity, if you like outdoor temperatures, sauna like, well, congratulations, you got your wish. Don't complain about it a week from now, because just like everyone was complaining about the fact it was cool and damp and this and that, well, guess what? You're getting your summer weather, and it's going to be coming and coming hard. It's going to be very impressive. Meanwhile, we have all the instability in the atmosphere, and I'm showing this now, even though it's not as impressive, just to show you the type of tropical nature of this atmosphere and just how unstable the atmosphere is with it. So it doesn't take much to break the capping layer on here, and when it does, boom, these thunderstorms blow up. So we have the environment, and now you have your jet stream here. This is a 250 millibars. This feature is what we're going to be watching for, and this feature here. See this divergence and diffluence here? It's very nice. It spreads out very nicely here. In fact, let me zoom in on this. Okay, so we've been watching this go all the way from the Mississippi River Valley, where it produced very actually back towards eastern Texas a couple of days ago. This feature produced very impressive severe thunderstorms, and it's lifted up through the Mississippi River Valley, the Western Tennessee River Valley, the heart of the Ohio River Valley. Guess where it's going next? No, not us, the Eastern Great Lakes. So if you have any friends and family around Syracuse, it is going to be pretty interesting tomorrow. But what about us? Well, this factor here, this part of the polar jet stream here, is going to have some influence. And at 850 millibars, this feature that's strengthening right here is going to influence our storms. Not so much with directional wind shear, but more like speed shear. It's going to enhance the 850 millibar jet, just enough to produce enhanced downburst wind gusts and speed shear, and most likely some bow echoes. And that could produce some pretty impressive strong wind gusts, possibly a few mesoloads, which can enhance the rainfall. If we get any type of tornadic development, it's going to be mostly on the south side of a mesoscale low. And most of the time, when you have these warnings that show up, it doesn't verify very well. But you don't want to take the gamble of trying to be too fine with these warnings. It's better to just put the warning out there, and if it doesn't verify, hey, at least people were warned and protected. But typically, these structures also really enhance heavy rainfall and heavy. Yep.
So breaking news just came in that Eric has intensified into a Category 3
Wow.
major
All right.
hurricane.
First Category 3 hurricane in the Pacific. There we go. And unfortunately, that's going to have a real significant impact on Mexico, unfortunately. Um,
So,
yeah, a lot of mudslides. It's rough. It's rough this time of year. Another thing I want to point out with the 850 millibar winds here, and thank you, Susan, for pulling that up. That's awesome. Um, Notice our moisture source. Okay, let me go down here. Where is the moisture source coming from? The Caribbean. Okay, so it's taking moisture from the Caribbean and tracking it right through Texas, right into the Mississippi River Valley, and into our neck of the woods. Sometimes it's good to take a step back while we're analyzing the thunderstorms to get a really good idea of what the moisture source here, what the air mass source here. The air mass source here is tropical. So if we have a tropical environment in place, that gives you a good idea of the type of thunderstorms you're dealing with and what we're going to be dealing with as we move forward in this type of weather pattern. So you can see how everything's all coming together, right? All the pieces are coming together. So when we take a look at the water vapor satellite picture, you could see just how dynamic this shortwave is here in the upper Midwest and in the central Great Lakes. Very impressive divergence and diffluence here, growing this storm. You got a nice outflow here, nice features out here. This is a pretty good signal that you got some severe weather and some strong lifting all throughout this region. This is via the warm front that's blowing through. And then you can see the tropical environment here in the southeast, all these pop up thunderstorms. Get used to seeing that quite a bit. So, this feature I'm looking to lift up here. This feature is what I'm looking to impact us. So, this feature, the worst of it, most likely heading towards the eastern Great Lakes. And then this feature lifts towards us, and that is what's going to lead to some scattered thunderstorms, and some of those thunderstorms will be pretty strong. On the infrared satellite picture, you can see the lifting very clearly here. We're moving into that part of the season now where we're going to get a lot of convective precipitation, a lot of blow up of cumulus, a lot of high tops blowing up, and you can see the growth of the strong lifting here in the Ohio River Valley as a result. And so when we start to look at our model data, see our upper level winds here for tomorrow afternoon. Look at where our jet streak is lined up. Okay, there it is at 250 millibars. Here we are, 850 millibars. So this feature right here, right, this is where I'm looking for impressive thunderstorms. The Syracuse, Tug Hill Plateau, northern New York, New England. Don't be surprised to see just a very impressive line of thunderstorms and possibly even some tornadoes popping up. Down here, more of the winds are more uniform. So up here you see kind of like the spreading here. You can see set up a veering of the winds and more of a directional wind shear. Down here, zoom in, all the winds are coming from the southwest at all levels of the atmosphere. And so this tells me, okay, not so much tornadic, but more straight line wind. Downburst and straight line wind. Those are what I'm going to be looking for. With winds pushing at around 40, 45 knots in the jet streak here, it opens up just enough wind speed to produce some speed shear in these thunderstorms. In terms of our lifting, like I was saying, your strongest lifting is heading up towards the eastern Great Lakes at 500 millibars, right? But you have enough lifting here to at least lift all this tropical moisture. We jump down to 850 millibars, see that even better in the afternoon and evening, okay? This right here is going to spark your line of thunderstorms. Your more dynamic thunderstorms are going to be here. So why am I pointing this out? This is a warning that there could be a bust here with the thunderstorms for tomorrow. And here's why. If I have all my lifting up here, well, if I have all this rising air, there must be sinking air somewhere because the atmosphere must balance itself out. Don't be surprised if, because the thunderstorms get so strong here, that it suppresses everything over northeastern Pennsylvania, Connecticut, the New York City metro, and northern New Jersey. I'm not saying that will happen. I'm saying don't be surprised if that happens. And then you get another strong cluster down here away from the strongest lifting down towards the southern mid Atlantic up to around Philadelphia, right in this area here. This is very hard to see. Typically, I like using the HRR guidance 6 hours out to really get an idea of exactly where that rising and sinking motion is at play here. But just looking at the synoptic environment here, I would not be surprised if we see that play out. Now, I just want to jump back to 500 millibars just to show something else. Put this in the back of your head here, all right? As we move forward with this weather pattern, notice we get this ridge just building, right? In our heat building. You notice these little features right here? This one there, this one there. Let's go back to Tuesday. You got another one right here. And as you move on through the week, you got these little features streaming on through. And you got this at 850 millibars as well. These little pesky little features. These little annoying little short waves. Why am I pointing that out? When you have a hot and humid weather pattern like what we're going to be getting, it is those tiny little short waves that go from an isolated severe thunderstorm threat or even an isolated shower threat, or maybe watch out for the sea breeze, and it becomes a major event for severe weather. Okay. Again, let's look at what the factors we have here: plenty of deep moisture, very hot temperatures, enhanced cape potential. All you need is a trigger. And we're seeing these triggers showing up in the guidance here. Little tiny, again, not organized cold fronts, not widespread thunderstorms, but just that small trigger kind of lighting the fuse. So this is the type of weather pattern that we're dealing with here, where you're gonna have to really be on your toes. So if you have any outdoor activities, even with this heat, if you're going out to a ball game or whatever, please be aware of the potential here. Because in this type of environment, with these little short waves, with little cold air aloft, it can go from sunny to a severe thunderstorm in a matter of 15 minutes, literally developing right over you. So that's what we're going to be dealing with in this structure. Now, like I said, a lot of moisture available for tomorrow afternoon, evening. That's a lot of moisture to work with for thunderstorms. So if we get the lifting, if we get the thunderstorms to grow, they will be capable of tapping into a lot of moisture, which is going to be capable of producing a lot of heavy rain. And then moving through with the rest of the pattern over the next several days. Hey, look, there's a lot of moisture to lift. And with that moisture to lift, there's a lot of potential here for some impressive thunderstorms. And meanwhile, in the mid levels, notice it's not as impressive. This type of environment at 700 millibars, you would think, oh, look, sunny, it's going to be beautiful. No, this type of environment, if you have this much dry air at 700 millibars and you have a lot of moisture at the surface, when you lift that moisture into this environment, the the moisture condenses and then slams to the ground. So this opens up the potential for thunderstorms to rapidly grow. Again, not widespread, but you get these isolated thunderstorms to grow in this drier environment aloft at 700 millibars, and you can end up in some very impressive thunderstorms. So this is a signal that I am watching very carefully, and I'll tell you this won't be the last time we see this type of weather pattern. So a lot of stuff that are just kind of standing out to me. Now, in terms of the potential for these high temperatures, we're seeing a lot of 850 millibar temperatures pushing over 20 degrees Celsius. This is driven by the upper level ridge sitting right over us. And what's happening here is that you're getting sinking air dominating, and sinking air warms, and so it's warming at 850 millibar temperatures. And what's happening is that because this tropical air mass is just sitting over us, it just kind of feeds back over itself and able to build and remain in place. So this is why you're seeing on the model guidance a lot of temperatures 99, 100, 103. It's good. I'm going to wait until we get under 5 days to really push that level, 100-degree temperatures. Is it possible? Yes, it's definitely possible. Heat index 100% possible. Okay, especially after all the moisture I was talking about. But what I am not confident of is the widespread hundreds yet, because what it needs is a lot of substance in place over the region. And typically, I hold off on that until July and August because we need time to build up this air mass. If we start getting hundreds in this period, you're talking about record breaking temperatures. Going back to tomorrow, I just want to point out the Cape values. And hey, what does the skew T look like? Well, this is the NAM guidance. How about a 3,065 joules per kilogram Cape? That's something I'd see out in Oklahoma. That's impressive stuff. So again, you get enough lifting to trigger everything. And the NAM's kind of showing some of that substance I was talking about here. Remember I was saying, like, hey, don't be surprised you get like a nice solid line and then a break and then another line down here. Well, I'm certainly seeing that signal. You know what else I'm seeing? Look at these lines. Look at these lines kind of bowing out, right? A lot of signal for straight line wind gusts. So again, I don't want to jump the gun and say like, everyone's getting severe thunderstorms. What I'm saying tomorrow is that in this type of environment, if you get a thunderstorm, you're going to know it because there is going to be very heavy rainfall, vivid lightning. Again, this is not a tornadic sign here, but certainly some straight line winds and the potential here for wind gusts over 55 miles per hour, which opens up your severe thunderstorm level. And of course, there is that potential here for hail as well. Not as much because this atmosphere is so warm and so moisture loaded, but there's still that potential out there. I think the primary concern will be the torrential downpours, the vivid, frequent lightning, and the downburst wind gusts. So overnight tonight, we'll watch out for a few lingering showers. Don't be surprised to get a little bit of fog mixed in there. Pretty quiet. And then for tomorrow afternoon, there's our thunderstorms that march through. So it is going to be a stormy afternoon and evening tomorrow. So if you have plans, I know there's a lot of people out there with high school and all sorts of school graduations going on right now. Tomorrow afternoon is not the time to have outdoor activities. I can tell you that right now, especially for graduation. I know everyone wants to be outdoors because you invite more people, but it's looking like a very stormy period of weather for sure. And then our weather pattern overall is just very unsettled, hot and unsettled. Now you might look at your phone app and it just has a big sun, but I'd put a lightning bolt in there. That's what I did this morning with this forecast because I could definitely see some of these thunderstorms sparking up in this environment. You hit 99, 95, and then you just get a little lifting, and boom, there is your thunderstorm potential. So I went over quite a bit already, and let's go and see what type of questions we have here. Of course, the rules are first I go through everything on the premium chat, and then we check out to see what's going on in social media land. A little bit of coffee. Oh, by the way, the Mets are still down 3-0, but at least it's not 6-0, right? You gotta be positive. Gotta be positive, okay? So let's see what we got here in the chat room. Let's see here. Good evening. Plan to hibernate indoors in the air conditioner next week. Yeah, I think a lot of people are going to be doing that. Yep. Although the Yankees offense has been weak the past 5, 6 games, if one jumps ship, one likely will miss the water. That's true. Look, no one should. I think if you are a Mets, Yankees, or Phillies fan, you should just ride it out. you're going to make the playoffs. Don't worry. Then the way that the playoffs is set up, hey, anything can happen. Multi-layer and filter satellite images is another thing that has improved and become more widely available in just the last 10 years. Oh, absolutely. Like I said, the stuff that I'm able to pull up now for free, I mean, well, not free, I'm paying it via taxes, you are too. But the stuff I'm able to get my hands on is just amazing. And it's something that, don't take it for granted. Terminator forecasts extreme heat following very long winter. Yep. Will a constant west southwest wind keep pushing warm surface ocean temperatures from the coast and allow cold water to keep rising to the surface, keeping the ocean temperatures cooler than normal? That's going to be a tough one. There is some support for that, but you have to kind of balance it out between if you have a lot of this heat, if it's progressive and keeps on sitting over the region, that's also going to warm up your water temperatures. Right now, this setup is, well, basically Long Island is your natural air conditioning area where the winds are going to come right off the Atlantic, and you're going to have a lot of locations stuck in the upper 70s to mid 80s, and then jumping up into the 90s once you hit New York City. Um, so anywhere where you have that southwesterly component is certainly going to be a factor. Um, the sea surface temperatures, I think, will start off cool, but as long as we keep this heat going, it will start to moderate back to near normal levels. But initially, that's going to be a source of some very interesting sea breeze fronts, I think, with the light winds aloft and at the surface. Newark only hit 86 degrees even with the heat island effect, but 91-degree index with this 70-degree dew point. Wind from the southeast, so presumed there was enough sea breeze influence to counter the heat island. Well, the issue for today was just that Newark was to the south and was to the north, should I say, of the warm front for most of the day, whereas central New Jersey and Philadelphia was to the south, so they had more of a westerly wind and a bit more of a humid air mass. And you could definitely tell the difference when I went outside at 9 a.m. this morning, it was relatively comfortable. When I went back out at 11 a.m., it felt like a sauna. So it definitely, there was a huge difference there. Even the 18Z GFS is having a tough time spinning up a hurricane in this environment. Yeah, that's how you know it's quiet when the GFS doesn't even produce anything. With all the moisture, do you see any days where there could be pop up storms just from breaking the cap by reaching convective temperature? Absolutely. I think we'll see that quite a bit, in fact. I think it's going to be a theme for much of this summer, in fact. If any tornadoes do spin up, is it likely it will be the usual spots, southeast Pennsylvania, and other spots where topography and heat island combine to create localized directional shear? If it happens, I would expect it to be somewhere around the I 95 corridor, usually to the northwest of the I 95 corridor. So we'll keep an eye on that, definitely. Um, how does the weather pattern affect flying from New York City area to the UK at the end of June and beginning of July? Well, the zonal jet stream initially should help you at least have a faster flight. I can't say whether it's going to be bumpy or not because during that time period, if you get any type of tropical system, that could be an issue. But certainly there won't be any drag. I'll put it that way. They shouldn't have any problem keeping up with time. Will the rain in this pattern be areas? Will the rain in this pattern be in areas of Canada to help put out the wildfires? No, the wildfires are off to the west, and they're not getting much help. So, but the good news for us is that with this southwesterly component, we really don't get experience with a lot of the smoke. So that's certainly some good news. I don't know about anybody else, but I could certainly use a tutorial on interpreting the skew T chart. You know what? That's going to be something I think I'll work on when we actually have a quiet, maybe, well, not next week. I won't be here, but maybe the week after, the 4th of July week, I'll do a live chat. If it's quiet, we'll go over all the details on the skew T just to break everything down. I think that would be fun. Let's see here. Google is using AI model to forecast tropical cyclones and working with the U.S. National Hurricane Center to test it out. What are your thoughts on this model? Hard to say. I need to see they're not releasing the raw data yet. So if I don't have the raw data, it's hard for me to make any comparisons. Um, my general rule is just like with any other model. I don't trust it the first year that it's out because you have to find out what its biases are, right? So once you get analysis on the bias of the model, then you can start to use it better because then you understand what it's capable of and not capable of. So I usually hold off on using these models in my forecast as far as like a main forecast driver and trying to understand the atmosphere until I get a good handle on what it can and can't do, what its biases are, and what it struggles with the most, and what environments. So we'll see how it works out. It's always good to push technology, so I'm always fine with that. Let's see, what do we have here in YouTube land? Holy smokes! Well, it looks like we're busy. Well, that's good to see. All right. Is the drought over? Yes, that's one thing for sure. Long Island, you guys could start to see severe weather. You're still going to be on the stable side of most of these storm events still, especially with any type of sea. You know what you have to watch out for? Sea breeze fronts, especially in central Long Island. Okay, in the central part of Long Island, don't be surprised to get some thunderstorms being a threat via sea breeze fronts in this weather pattern. Uh, this pattern, will this pattern of stalling fronts generally provide enough shear for strong severe thunderstorms? Um, you know what? It's not so much the shear that I'm going to be worried about. It's more going to be about the amount of moisture in the atmosphere interacting with drier portions in the mid and upper levels of the atmosphere. Let me see if I can pull up an example here. Give me a second. Let me see if I can pull up an example that's really good. Let's see here. Okay. Not the best one, but let me just kind of pull it up here. So this is on, let's see, this is 0Z21st. So it is, make sure we got the right time here. Yeah. So Friday evening. Not expecting much. So let me go back to the afternoon here. Okay, so here's my concern. Now, obviously, you got a lot of moisture here. You got this setup here, all and locked in pretty good. Make sure I get your question back here. Sorry about that. Okay, good. All right, so in this environment where you have a lot of tropical moisture to work with, what I'm concerned about is not so much vertical wind shear and stationary fronts. I am more concerned with taking all this moisture and lifting it up into these type of dry columns. Because when you lift this moisture via a sea breeze front or a weak short wave, what happens is that all that moisture condenses. And when it condenses, that's rain cooled air in the mid levels of the atmosphere that falls back to the ground like a rock. And when that happens, that leads to winds crashing to the surface and then expanding out. And so when it expands out, that expansion, which typically looks like what we call an outflow boundary on the model on the radar, that leads to very powerful wind gusts. And that is where I think our primary concern will be from severe weather in that respect. So that is what I'm going to be looking out for over the next couple of weeks and really the rest of the summer. That is one of my significant concerns. Uh, what changed in terms of the overall pattern setup? I feel like last week we were talking about the more temperature pattern sticking with a lot of weekend storm setups. Well, what happened is that you had the feature that's out in the Pacific that kind of retrograded a little bit back towards more of the Aleutians, that opened up the potential for your ridge to build. Now, the question was not if, the question was only when. We said that quite a bit. I said that quite a bit. When we get that shift happen, boom, then the hot and weather pattern will take shape. And that is essentially what has changed. Let's see here. Boring like Philadelphia. Let's see here. Going over some of the questions. I've been using WeatherWise for radar, and I notice whenever I look at JFK Terminal, it always displays a light streak to the northwest across downtown Brooklyn, Lower Manhattan, and New Jersey. That's most likely um, an error with the radar beam interacting with some of the structures. That's usually what's causing that. Most providers kind of clears that out for you, but I guess they don't. What is the timing of the severe thunderstorms come Thursday afternoon? Generally, I'm looking at from 3 p.m. to 8 p.m. Tomorrow. Is this pattern is this pattern typical for a gesture position for to the north of our area? Oh yeah, this is par for the course for summers around here. Look, summers in the northern mid Atlantic either are tropical, balmy, and uncomfortable with a few storms, or wet. And then every so often we get a dry summer like we did last year. But those are usually your two primary summer type environments. Uh, da, da, da. Why isn't the severe threat higher? Oh, okay. Because of the Cape values. Okay, good question. Okay, remember what I was mentioning about the stronger lifting up towards the eastern Great Lakes and suppressing sinking air because of it? That's why. Combine that with the fact that the wind shear just isn't all that impressive. You got some speed shear, but really your more impressive shear is up towards the eastern Great Lakes. You take those two factors, and that's generally why. I think tomorrow's more about. I would not be surprised if there's more areas that report flash flooding and urban flooding than severe weather. I would not be surprised if that happens. Da, da, da. Let's see. Anything new on X or Facebook?
Let me check.
What radar? Okay, no problem. What radar system do I recommend? Honestly, I've been using. I This is not paid advertising, but I've been using Weather Tap since I was in college. Which now I'm going to date myself. That's now going back uh, almost 25 years, a quarter century. I've been using Weather Tap. So hey, there you go.
Are you
Uh,
old?
no, I'm not old. I'm just finally aged, like fine
I
wine.
know.
You're not old either. So anything up on Facebook or
Okay,
anything?
you know how Facebook isn't cooperating.
Facebook doesn't like to cooperate, so we always have to stall a little bit when we are dealing with that. In the meantime, let me just see.
Constant.
500 millibar temperatures are really cold, so any warm air that gets left up is going to cool very fast. Yes, and that is the concern here. And also the fact that we also have a cold stratospheric environment. Now, you might be saying, Stephen, why do I care about the stratosphere? Well, fair question. If the stratosphere is very cold over your location, it enhances the potential for your convection to grow even more. Okay. So it's like an uncapped potential here. So if you get that spark growing, boom. Why do you think we've been seeing all these impressive severe thunderstorms off in the plains where everything else lines up just right? Stratosphere is cold. Let the fun begin. That's what happens. Facebook is quiet.
Everything's quiet.
X is quiet.
You,
YouTube is the busy ones. You guys on YouTube are doing your job. Great job. Great questions, by the way. Let's see. Let me go back here. So this is why I like doing this, because sometimes I'll get some questions that like make me ponder, and then I gotta go do research and really study things. Let's see here. Will we get any lows in the 50s in July? That would surprise me quite a bit. I never say never, especially when it's that far out. Like I can't say like, there will never be any 50-degree temperatures in July. I would just say I would be very surprised if there are 50-degree temperatures in July.
Even overnight, I don't think
No.
it'll really.
Maybe lower 60s,
Yeah,
maybe
60's pretty low for overnight in
for a
July.
night. Yeah, that's pretty much about it. Any indication about July and August above or below average? I would say that once we get this pattern locked in, we're pretty much locked in for the rest of the summer. That's pretty much been the summer forecast. So if this locks in, as it looks like it will for next week, I'm not saying we're going to be around 95 or 100 the whole time the rest of the summer, but we're going to be on the above normal side. In terms of precipitation, now what can make this a little bit of a wild card is that if you get some tropical remnants coming in involved here, that could certainly knock down our temperatures a bit. But just because of the cloudy skies and the steady rainfall for a couple of days, that could sometimes do a number on your anomalies. Yeah, not going to talk about apps from other providers because sometimes those guys could be a little bit too sensitive. They'll test you just a little bit.
Yeah, fireflies.
We have fireflies. That's always good to know. My wife really loves fireflies. She's been in all the past couple of days about the fireflies. And we have quite a few of them in the backyard now, so that's always
Early
good.
childhood joy.
Yeah. And the Yankees actually scored some runs. I'm waiting for the Mets to score a run or something. I don't know. Not our time. If the pattern locks in, what in August and after would break the pattern and start a new pattern? Oh boy. Um, that's a hard one. I honestly don't know yet. I mean, that's the truth. I really don't know yet. Um, it kind of depends. I really want to see if there's some sort of shift in the tropical forcing. Because right now, I have literally no indication in terms of tropical forcing. It is as neutral as you can get. So that's going to be something I'm going to be watching for in August and September. And also, we'll see just how much influence the QBO starts having. That'll be another factor as well. But I really don't know any details at this point. It's too far out for me. Are there more weather problems for flights to UK during the day or overnight, in your opinion? Not really any different. I mean, because you're, well, I mean, let me see here. Initially, probably the Gulf Stream probably will have some issues because of convection during the afternoon hours, evening hours. But really, there's not much of a difference. And usually, the way that they set up these flights, they usually set you up in the area of least resistance and within the strong jet stream that marches across from Greenland to the UK. So typically, you don't have to deal with too much of a bumpy. I get a sense someone's concerned about the turbulence with this flight. And I would say that for the most part, they're pretty good at aligning and reducing the shear because you have such a traffic involved here that you want to be able to move those flights along without too much of delay outside your normal airport delays. But I think you'll be fine overall. Yeah, New York City air traffic control issues. Honestly, I think if you're going out of Newark, that's been improving. Fingers crossed for me. Um, but for the most part, I've heard issues at LaGuardia and JFK just normal. But as far as getting across the Atlantic, you should be fine day or night. It really isn't too much of a factor, not too much of an issue. If anything, at night you look out for the 850 millibar jet, but by at the height you guys are flying, you're above that anyway, so I wouldn't worry about that. Not looking forward to mowing lawn in this stifling humidity. Yeah, I would definitely use extreme caution with any type of outdoor activities.
Coverage helps.
Yes.
Good hat.
Good hat, plenty of water. Get back in the air conditioning as quickly as you can. Yep. So my thoughts on weather apps in general is if it's from a company, I really don't give an opinion on it because, again, people concerned. I would say weather apps in general, especially ones that produce a lot of these weather phone apps, right? The problem with them is that they have very limited quality control. They claim they do, but they really don't. And it's really pure model data. So everything that we discussed this evening really doesn't go into their forecast all that much, whoever that provider might be. So that's why I typically stay away from them. Oh, okay. This is a good one. This might be a good one to end on. Okay. My son is 17 and interested in meteorology. What can he do in his senior year to prepare for college? Okay. Oh, all right. Let's see here. Okay. So here are my suggestions, right? Not only getting during your senior year, but also your freshman year in college. One, focus on math. Okay. Have a strong understanding of physics. Okay. Um, Study up on those. Three, learn that it is okay to fail. It's not okay to quit, but it's okay to fail. What I mean by that is that you're going to be going and taking courses with intense math courses. You're talking about multivariable calculus. You're talking about all sorts of high end physics and a lot of understanding the dynamics in the atmosphere. You're going to fail some of these tests. The hardest lesson you have to learn is how to take failure and improve upon it, to take it and make yourself better. That is the difference between, yeah, learn from your mistakes. That is the difference between someone who is a freshman and then drops out or a freshman that advances and graduates. Is that ability to learn from your mistakes, to take that test in and to say, okay, what do I need to improve on? What am I missing? So that's something that is very important. I would also suggest that they, when they look for a college, right? This is very important as well. Don't worry about the name. The name matters for about 15 seconds for your first job. Okay. What matters is how do you learn? Are you comfortable learning in a large classroom, small classroom? Do you need more in-depth tutoring? Do you need to be able to talk to the professor, or are you okay with somebody who's just 4 years ahead of you to answering questions? Um, do you need study groups, or are you more comfortable with learning by yourself, which is a book? These are the things you have to ask yourself because when you go visit your colleges, yeah, the location's nice, the football team is nice, but when I went and checked out Penn State and Rutgers, I didn't like the size of the classes because it was just too big, right? And for me, I know I needed a little bit more of a smaller touch. I'm not good at learning in a stadium, right? Which is essentially what I felt like at these locations, which is fine. So other people are very good at that, right? So you need to understand, you need to learn that, okay? And I guess the final thing too is learn how to be comfortable in yourself. It's challenging. It's a lot of challenge, a lot of challenges, a lot of changes, um, and that's something that you have to consider. Again, give yourself room to fail and get back up, and stay away from Greek associations. I'm sorry, but all the frats and all that stuff. Look, you could pull that off as a broadcast major or maybe a history major. You can't pull that stuff off as a meteorology major. I don't care what anyone says because you cannot go out and party Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday and expect to pass your multivariable calculus test on Monday. It ain't happening. Trust me. So that's what I would suggest. You're going to be a unique cat in college. You're actually going to be focused on getting the degree and getting out in 4 years. And finally, the last thing I would suggest as a freshman, take a general education course on business law and really take it to heart because when you graduate, they're going to throw contracts at you, and you have to learn, you have to know how to read them. And it's not going to be like, hey, you're 22, you should, we're going to be easy on you and show you all the little fine print in these contracts. You better learn about contract law, business law, and learn how to make your own business plan, so that way you can have more control over your career as you go
There's
and
always
get
going to be
ready.
somebody out there trying to rope you into a bad deal.
That's true. And also reach out to your local National Weather Service offices to see if there's any potential for internships. They do an amazing job with some of the students, and also get involved in your local American Meteorological Society group. Wouldn't matter what college you go to, they most likely will have an organization for you to get involved in. And also, you can start to reach out to them now and start to build that network. On that, I think that pretty much covers everything for tonight. So, like I said, no live chat next week because I will be in Boise. I don't know whether or not I'll have videos all next week because I don't know what my internet connection is going to be like, but I will have text discussions. So we'll definitely have that. I'm just not sure about the video discussions throughout the week. Certainly on Monday morning, but I don't know about the rest of the week. So just bear with me on that. That's pretty much all I have. Thank you, as always, for a wonderful live chat. And as always, stay safe out there.